Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is actually part 3 of a webinar series that we've been running. If you tuned into part 1 and part 2 and you're here for part 3, I think you're in for a little bit of a treat because we're going to be joined with quite a lot of people who have some questions and comments and opinions. So I think it's going to be a very interactive session. Patricia and Maria are back here again today to go through Internationalization Readiness Part 3. In terms of questions, we will be asking questions and we'll be looking for a lot of interaction with people who have tuned into today's webinar. If you'd like to ask a question, again, if you just go to your GoToWebinar control panel, about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see a question box. Just click that, type your question in, we will see it and we will endeavour to answer it for you. However, when we do get to the more interactive pieces, and if you feel that you want to comment on something, you can also tick the little hand button on the control panel and raise your hand to ask, and we can unmute your microphone, and then that way you can obviously ask a question or comment on something that's being discussed on today's webinar. Obviously, we can't open the microphones up to everybody at the same time because that would be quite noisy, but just simply click the button and we'll do our best to get to you. We can't promise we'll get to everybody just due to the sheer numbers, but sit back, enjoy, and we hope you enjoyed today's webinar, part 3. Thank you very much for joining. Patricia, Maria, over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon, and hello everyone. This is María Jesús de Arriba Díaz from Vistatec. I'm delighted to talk to all of you again for this final part of our insightful masterclass on internationalization readiness. As Simon has said, today's webinar will be an interactive knowledge fest type of session where we will cover issues that you have shared with us as part of the survey responses, and we will also share some video interviews and experiences from some of the veterans and experts in the internationalization readiness field. So as Simon has explained as well, everyone will be able to raise their hand whenever you want to ask a question or contribute or a comment. Or if you're feeling a little bit shy, you can always type the question in the box. We know that this is a topic that we're all very passionate about, and if we don't get to cover all the questions or points that you raise during the live webinar, we are more than happy to continue the conversation offline. We will endeavor to answer any questions, as part of kind of the follow-up and sharing the recording with you. So if that's okay with everybody, I'm just going to do a really quick, brief round of introductions for anybody who wasn't with us or hasn't had a chance to listen to parts 1 and 2. And first, I'll just share a few words about Vistatec. We have been providing global content services for organizations worldwide since 1997, and we have built a reputation on business and technology solutions that accelerate global commercial success. Personally, as a strategic accounts director here at Vistatec, I work directly with some of the world's leading brands and organizations, supporting them on their global journey. And I also wear a couple of other hats that I very much enjoy and thrive in, as development director for the Think Global Forum, and also as EMEA Geo Manager with Women in Localization. And now I'd like to introduce you once again to my superb, amazing co-host, Patricia Paladini Adell. Patricia, thanks so much for joining us again today.
Hi, Maria, and hi, everybody, and hi, Simon. Thank you very much for inviting me again.
So for those of you who don't know Patricia, can't really imagine there's anybody who doesn't know her, but she's a globalization veteran with over 18 years experience in our industry and wears many, many hats. So from her current role as Director of Globalization at CA Technologies to Forum Executive of the Think Global Forum Technology, she's also a chapter manager for the Catalan chapter of Women in Localization, as well as executive director, or director, I should say, of the Metrics program. She also lectures at Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, She's also a recognized contributor to the localization industry and kind of a regular speaker at LocWorld Gala and participates in many different internationalization special interest groups. So it's a pleasure to be joined by Patricia again for our season finale on internationalization readiness. And now I am going to hand you over to Patricia.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, once more. Thank you for participating in this last session of our webinar, and thank you for participating in the previous one. Just as a very good reminder, let me go quickly through what we explained in the two previous webinars. So basically, from an INTN readiness point of view, we were promoting or elevating the shift left concept, which basically means let's try to fix, or not to fix, let's try to develop products and software with internationalization in mind. So we don't need to spend time and money in a reactive approach, fixing everything we find it's wrong from an internationalization or localization point of view, just the day before the product has to be released. So we talk about the major requirements, which basically are Unicode support. We have to avoid critical functions or make sure critical functions work properly, which basically is that calendar in Europe starts on Monday, not on Sunday. So those things have to be able to be set up and customized for the end users. Be careful on how developers use variables and placeholder, because that becomes something untranslatable, and we're going to talk about this during the seminar or the webinar today. And finally, the text for translation has to be stored in resource bundle in the software, otherwise it cannot be translated. So from localization requirement point of view, again, avoid truncations. Strings have to be consentence. Don't break those sentences. Concatenate. Don't concatenate them at runtime. Make sure that what the technical the developers write is not ambiguous, because words in English sounds great, maybe ambiguous. Sometimes this ambiguous word come out due to concatenations. And finally, try to provide context, maybe as screenshots or as a note in the code, so translators know what they are translating. So how can we solve these issues? How can we fight against all these villains that we discussed in the previous webinar? So the answer is we do have heroes, we have INTN heroes, and we also introduced them in the previous webinar. You can go to next slide, Maria, please. Mm-hmm. Great. So if you remind, we had content hide, we had code scanner, and we also had plog or pseudo localization, which are the tools that the developers and project managers have, and also software engineers in localization has to fight against those villains that we know so good. So going to next slide, Maria is going to introduce us on the results of the survey that most of you replied based on the previous two webinars, and in order to prepare this last part 3.
Thank you, Patricia, for that quick recap on parts 1 and 2 of the series. And thank you, everybody, for taking part in the survey that we launched after part 2 and in preparation for part 3. Everybody's contributions were very insightful and certainly very, very useful. When we asked you, like the core question that we asked you all was, what are your biggest internationalization readiness pain points? And there was just a kind of overwhelming response, and 61% of you said that it was educating developer teams on internationalization requirements. So obviously that is the hot topic, and certainly a topic that we're going to discuss over the next while as part of today's session. Then a combined 20% of you kind of were equally split between detecting and remediating internationalization issues during the translation phase, and/or embedding localization in an agile development process. So that was very interesting. And then the other 20+% mentioned other issues that we hadn't kind of included in our original sort of list, and some of these were actually really interesting. They range from like implementing internationalization from like the very beginning, from the design phase, sort of the conceptual phase, to the production stages, obviously educating product teams, not only developers, kind of introducing internationalization testing as kind of a mandatory exit criteria, the impact of not being internationalization ready, and also how to evangelize or kind of get buy-in for internationalization in startups and smaller companies, perhaps reactive approaches to internationalization, and some kind of novel concepts, such as, for instance, the relationship and the link between internationalization, localization, and user experience testing. So I'm going to stop here, and I think the best thing we can do is to hear it directly from all of you. So I'm going to hand you back over to Patricia, and we're going to get this show started.
Thank you. So, as Maria just said, let's hear it from you. What we've done is, for those of you that volunteered through the survey to have a quick interview with us, we have either interviewed you on voice, or we have asked you to provide a short video with questions or experience that you have on the area of INT readiness. So basically, most of your feedback is backing up the responses of the survey. So this is really amazing. So let's start with Igor from Evernote. Unfortunately, he cannot attend the webinar. So basically, we interview him on voice recently. So let's ask Igor to introduce himself.
My name is Igor Afanasyev. I work at Evernote as a director of localization. It's been a while. I'm working for 10 years now, and we basically do everything in-house: localization, translation, internationalization.
Yeah, I hope the sound was better now. Sorry for these technical issues, but you know, this is technology, always happen. So thank you, Igor, for introducing. So our question for you would be, apart from, you know, the issues or the VLANs we have just described, are there any other best practice or pain points that you would like to share related to INT and readiness? Maria, I'm going to play the second audio, if you don't mind.
Sure.
To make sure.
One topic I would like to bring up is using name placeholders, because this is a practice that we find very useful at Evernote. So consider the following example. You have a string that you need to translate, which says something like, do you want to delete, and then %s being a string style placeholder for something. And linguists don't know what this something will be in the final output, so they have to ask questions, or you have to provide additional context, additional comments to the linguist. Instead of having that string, imagine that you have a string that says, do you want to delete notebook name? A notebook name is a special placeholder surrounded by, for example, like curly braces or whatever other symbols you have. And it visually stands out. We usually use all caps for that. And basically allowing us to name what will be, what the placeholder will be replaced with, allows us to convey that special context, that special meaning, and allow to translate that string more easily and with less problems. So we have open source library, cross-platform library that supports such name placeholders across different platforms, and it also allows us to unify messaging across different platforms. Because instead of using platform-specific placeholders for like iOS and Android and Windows and web, we're using the same library, and the same messages look exactly the same and different platforms when it comes to translation, so we can efficiently reuse those translations as well.
Yeah, definitely, Igor. This is a great idea. It's interesting to see how companies really find out workarounds to help developers and to help translators in order to automatize and as much as possible the localization process. So definitely, you know, tagging or identifying those placeholders with a proper name, meaningful name, that would definitely help translators a lot. And it's definitely what we call shift left, meaning that you are avoiding, avoiding finding issues. So if we go to next slide, let's get Ada Lily Wang from Expedia. This is another workaround on another, you know, strategy they have put together at Expedia in order to solve to help translators with NT problems.
Hi, this is Ada Lily Wang from Expedia. I'm a senior localization project manager, and I work on UI projects across multiple brands. As we always work with different brands and products, we found that each team has their own approach to the processes. While these poses a particular challenge, we see a possibility to summarize best practices, look for opportunities to evangelize them, and build it into our tools and processes. We believe that this empowers us to improve our efficiency and effectiveness. A recent success of ours is the development of a pluralization checker. Using this tool, developers can easily check that their source code is localization friendly for the languages with multiple proof fonts. We check the feedback on that, and developers love it. Opportunities do not always happen, but we can create them. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank you very much, Ada. So again, cross communication, cross team, you know, explaining your challenges to the team is always a great strategy to try to understand what are the pain points for each side and try to find solutions, creative solutions that, for example, that is one idea just described, which basically is a checker for pluralization checker. So if developers are writing something that will be a problem in localization because it will require plural, the checker somehow tells developers, be careful, this is not going to work in a localized version. And they get a warning and they're supposed to fix that. So Maria, would you like to open up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're both very interesting challenges, both I suppose the topics and the solutions that Igor and Ada have shared. Perhaps we can continue on to the next topics and some of the novel areas that are kind of slowly getting into the internationalization field.
Yep, exactly. So basically, in our next session or the next interview we had with Igor, again, we talked a little bit about testing. What's all the novelty, or what are the current issues that we foresee, or he foresees, because he's a visionary, as you can imagine, will happen with testing. And if I was the first one surprised to hear that maybe Unicode is not enough. Let's see what Igor has to say.
So by and large, there's no problem with supporting Unicode in modern software, right? So all databases, all frameworks, and programming languages support Unicode just fine. However, we see that this is not true for emojis. For example, MySQL, one of the most popular databases, doesn't store emojis properly unless you configure it in a certain way. You also have to pay attention to using fonts and fonts fallbacks, especially on Windows, to display emojis properly. So my advice here is that nowadays we need to make testing emojis a part of the regular QA. test for emoji input and output? Will it work as a username, as a part of the password? Will the user be able to input emojis and then see them in the context of the UI? Will they be able to search by emoji characters? So all that stuff needs to be thoroughly tested nowadays, and especially on Windows, because we see that most challenges with supporting emojis and displaying emojis come from that platform.
Right, exactly. So yeah, did you ever thought about emojis? Then, you know, this may be part of the future again. So we can never relax, because even if we thought everything is under control, we may get a new kid on the block requesting us to, you know, to customize and further develop our tools. And again, always the focus has to be less test or less make it as INT and ready as early as possible at development time. So we don't, you know, we can save time and money and increase the quality. So our next collaborator contributor goes without presentation is Bruno Herman, a global leader in digital content. Bruno has shared with us a short video challenging us and talking about the approach, an holistic approach of INT testing. Let's see if the video plays well.
In my experience, one of the main challenges of global readiness is to make sure that linguistic, cultural, and functional intelligence are covered. So in every program or project about testing and certification, we should make sure that fixing a functional bug doesn't create a linguistic or cultural bug, or vice versa. So definitely there is a way to keep that interwoven and to actually have a comprehensive view on global readiness testing and certification without ignoring each aspect of content effectiveness.
Yeah, excellent, excellent, Bruno. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
again,
I think they're both really novel topics, right? They're just, well, actually, I would have never thought of emojis as kind of, you know, the next big thing in terms of internationalization readiness. And I think Bruno introduces the topic of culturalization, which is kind of one of the latest buzzwords and buzz topics. So, Patricia, I don't know if you'd like to add anything to either Igor's or Bruno's videos, or perhaps we could ask the audience if there are any other sort of new kids on the block, to borrow Igor's expression, that you have seen or experienced, or if you indeed have a view, or if you have gone through similar challenges to what Igor and Bruno have described.
Yeah, so now we're going to go more into the details related to how can we evangelize developers. We have a question from Robert Mello, an INT engineer at Motorola.
Hi, Patricia. First of all, thank you for providing this amazing discussion about internationalization. My name is Robert. I am an INT engineer at Motorola. And my question for you is, what is the biggest challenge when you start to evangelize globalization aspects for developers? Sometimes I feel that they underestimate our area. So what is your advice to deal with that? Thank you again.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, my advice again is education, and I agree with you that I don't know why, maybe it's due to cultural or historical reason, but globalization most of the times it's underestimated. Globalization should be at the same level of securability or accessibility, you know, those non-functional requirements that every single software should be compliant with in order to allow this quick localization and allow, in a way, global expansion. So my recommendation again is educate developers, become friends. We have to become best friends forever of developers and educate them. How to educate them? That's the tricky part, and we will talk about that through the webinar. But let me give you a present, which is SORAP feedback on how NetApp's currently educates developers on how NetApps today works with developers in order to facilitate this checklist. So let's listen to Saurabh.
Hi, I'm Saurabh Kautekar. I work for NetApp and I lead globalization for all products at my company. Today, I will briefly share about how we lead and evangelize internationalization at NetApp. My organization, the Globalization Program Strategy Office, is part of a centralized organization like a Center of Excellence unit. For many years, we saw that having product development teams aligned with product internationalization plans was really very challenging. For many years, we saw that having product development teams do internationalization as part of their release plans was not easy. So we came up with a strategy that has a multi-pronged approach to evangelize and embed internationalization in product engineering teams' workflows. Through this strategy, we do three broad things. We educate the engineers and the teams, we fix legacy internationalization gaps, and we automate internationalization process to prevent any future internationalization issues. In education, what we do is we educate briefly the new hires on the day one, and then we have broader modules for detailed trainings on internationalization for product engineering teams. And then we use vendors to clean up any legacy internationalization issues in the code. And then finally, we have static code analysis tools and automation that make sure that no new non-compliance of internationalization is introduced in the product development cycle, and that's how we manage the show. With this, what we have done is we have moved from a reactive way of execution for internationalization engineering to a more proactive governance model in the company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saurabh. Saurabh has introduced a very interesting subject here, which is how do you deal with internationalization for legacy, not internationalized code versus new code that you are calling right now. This is very interesting because there is no way you can use the same approach. Obviously, if you have a ton of legacy product that has to be localized or was written a long time ago, you will have to stop. You really have to stop, clean it up, run, as Saurabh mentioned, scanners. Make sure invest. You really need to invest to make sure that this code will be internationalized ready. However, for everything which is new, what is being developed now, like for example, software in startups, and we will talk about startups a little bit later, things can be done more at the same time developing is happening. So you can do it in a more agile way. So that would be my add-ons on Saurabh.
Yeah, I think it is really solid advice, and I think his sort of three-prong approach is really good. Is educate first and foremost, get any legacy issues fixed, and then automate the sort of the internationalization testing for future releases. So I'm just wondering, is there anybody in our audience who do anything else other than that? Do they have any tips or any ideas that you would like to share with the rest of our audience?
Feel free also to comment on previous, I know that it takes time to raise your hand and all this, but feel free to also to comment on previous discussions that we have had during this webinar.
So we've one question here, if I can just cover it for you. So earlier in the presentation, right at the very start, Maria, when you were sharing the pain points, you were saying that I think it was 61% of the people that were surveyed were saying that basically that educating the developer teams was their main pain point. So that was by far the biggest segment, correct?
Correct, yeah, 61%.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just wondering how you contrast that with the comments that we've just heard, which is, you know, if you go back a few years, you know, getting the product development teams to do localization was not easy. And then you're talking about that multi-pronged approach. But like, how easy is it to do that really? Because, you know, a large percentage of people that were surveyed were all saying, look, this is where the real pain point is, you know, and it all seems to come back to education. So do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Sure, and I think actually, Patricia, I know Susanna had shared a question with us just around the whole area of training and educating. So I'm just wondering if perhaps it would be a good time to introduce that at this stage, and then we can elaborate a bit more.
Sure. Yeah. Let me go back to Susanna's video. So let's listen to questions that Susanna Fiori nicely submitted to us, and which is basically related to how to train developers.
Hi everyone, my name is Susanna Fiorini. I am a localization and internationalization consultant. Patricia, according to you, who should provide internationalization training to IT developers and product owners? Is it a linguist or maybe someone with an IT background? Or maybe there is role for another professional role in the localization industry? If so, is there any training program or material that you would recommend? Thank you.
Okay, so this is a 3-question video. So should linguists or globalization engineers provide training? Is there any room for role evolution in the industry? And is there any training? Okay. I'm gonna, you know, in my opinion, and this is something that is going to be discussed in, I'm sure, in the next industry events like Gala next week, and so this is also going to show up in LocWorld in Portugal in a few months. The role of, you know, the traditional roles we have today in the localization industry are going to change. It's not the linguist who has to train developers, is, you know, on how to develop, but it's not an engineer, globalization engineer, that has to train developers on how to write for translation. I really see a role that roles are going to evolve, and we're going to be doing less project manager or traditional project manager, and linguists and engineers, globalization engineers, are going to become more facilitator, especially in this case of software localization, which is what we are discussing here. We're going to take more a role of facilitator and helping them, training them, validating that developers are turning over the files for translation with the appropriate shape. And I think it's good. It's good that we are aware, and we are start noticing that these new requirements in our industry. There are going to be more and more artificial intelligence in the tools. So our team will, the typical roles will stop doing things that artificial intelligence can do, and they will focus on things that human intelligence should be doing, which is good. Like, for example, educating and helping developments on how to write for INTN readiness. Regarding training, unfortunately, this is really new. I don't know at any college that in their, you know, if you're doing software engineering, or even if you're taking translation at degree, none of them are talking about INTN readiness. So there is definitely a gap between both of them. And to my knowledge, there is no really training material. Companies and corporations, they do their best. They create their internal material. This is most of the time part of the company content, so it's not public. But if you talk to different guys in the industry, at the end of the day, everyone has the same checklist, they have the same requests for developers. So maybe it's a good opportunity in the industry to start elaborating on this material and start sharing it with the community. In this line, we do have another great video from María Nieves Esteban, the project manager at Expedia. Maria is going to share with us how, again, at Expedia, they are, you know, how they're building bridges between developers and the globalization team in order to cross solve the problem we have in readiness.
Hi there, my name is María Nieves Esteban, and I'm a Senior Localization Project Manager at Expedia Group. I have been enforcing and evangelizing internationalization standards and best practices throughout my career in localization, both in UI and content generation projects. I like to look at internationalization as an opportunity for establishing or strengthening cross-team, cross-functional collaboration. I-18N compliance requires alignment, teamwork, continuous improvement efforts, and sometimes a radical change in product vision. From my role as a project manager, I always encourage teams to learn from each other. As localizers, we see ourselves consulting with product owners, UX design specialists, content strategists, and developers on a daily basis. This partnership approach has yielded very positive results so far. An interesting cross-team reflection I believe is worth sharing is that no language should be sacrificed due to poor I-18N compliance. For instance, English verbiage should not become intertwined like a pretzel to allow for localization quality or vice versa. Teams should push for tech solutions that will give linguists more flexibility and solve for underlying challenges. So in the end, localization relies on a tech partnership. These are my 2 cents on one of my favorite topics. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and thank you, Maria. Definitely, this is what we're talking about. Rules are changing, and I would encourage Center of Excellence, globalization teams, language service provider to move away from the comfort zone, if this exists, and let's start take advantage and talk and facilitate and communicate all the knowledge we do have with your customers or with your partners in other teams.
Absolutely, and I think the cross-team collaboration, Patricia, is fundamental. It kind of marks the difference between successful approaches and kind of more challenging ones. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's all about communicating, working together, as we had mentioned in some of the previous webinars. Like find a champion in the sort of the developers team, find a champion at a more senior level, and even if there isn't anything formally kind of established in your company, be the force behind that change, right? So take up all the feedback that you're accumulating and start driving it forward in your organization. And perhaps one day between us all we will create standards, and it will be much easier for people to know whether they are on the right path, on the right track or not. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria. You really, I support you with this champion strategy. You really sound perfect to me. Okay, so now we have, that's the last video. Thanks, Susana, again for sharing your questions, your hot questions. I like it because you're really asking, in this particular video, Susana is going to ask us for the $1 million questions. $1 million questions, sorry. Let's listen to her.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susanna Fiorini. I am a localization and internationalization consultant. Here is my question for Patricia. How to convince small and medium enterprises to invest in a structured internationalization process from the very beginning, even if they have low budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. So this kind of roll back to what Saurabh was mentioning about legacy and new code. How to combine? Definitely, the only way to combine small, medium companies, and not the company, but the CEO, which may not know anything about globalization or internationalization or translation. It's showing them the money. Okay, how can we calculate How can we calculate? How can we estimate how much are we saving if we do a proper internationalization approach of software development phase instead of acting reactively, basically when the features are formed. So, you know, there is no easy answer here. Basically, it depends on each company, but a possible approach would be try to estimate, try to calculate how many time or how many hours engineers spend doing INTN testing, localization testing, or internationalization testing. A good time of these hours that typically are recorded in some of those tools that engineers use to track the user stories and the backlog, etc., or the defect system. So a bunch of, you can associate the number of defects related to internationalization with the number of hours spent by the number of people. I'm not going to say that we can go, get into a zero internationalization testing or development testing is going to be always possible, but definitely the cost spent by engineers on internationalization testing, localization testing can be significantly reduced. So at least if you are able to estimate that cost as today, that you have figures that you can, a dollar figure that you can use as baseline in order to calculate how much you're going to save, because most probably you should be able to save a significant amount of, a significant percentage of this total time and total cost. So that would be a possible approach to try to understand, to combine, to explain why INTN readiness is so important. But again, it will also depend on the company. If you have like a huge product which was developed a long time ago, now has to go global, it has to be internationalized. I mean, they will have to invest. They will have to invest in making that code ready. But the more they invest, the best they do the job. The quicker, the cheaper, and the smooth the globalization it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think this also probably applies, Patricia, to startups that are probably in that category of sort of small and medium companies initially, but obviously they're looking for rapid growth. And I know it's kind of really hot and a very broad topic. We hopefully have Yuka Nakasone from BA in the audience. Yuka drives the globalization at BA and has had huge success in terms of internationalization. So I don't know, Yuka, if you're there and if you would like to add anything or share any of your experience in terms of evangelizing internationalization or kind of getting internationalization on the priority list at a startup.
We have, I'm sure, Yuka, we can come to in a second. I have Maria Esteban as well who'd like to comment on the conversation.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Perfect. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, Yuka, I know you're there. I can see you, and we'll open your mic up in a second. We just go to Maria, and then Yuka will follow up if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Hi, Maria. Can you hear us?
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Over to you.
Excellent. Guys. Okay, well, it's a very interesting discussion on internationalization, cost savings, and investments. And I just want to share some background information, some knowledge that's out there. There are some companies that have done some industry studies, like IBM, for example, and the cost of catching bugs earlier, it reduces costs significantly, up to 20 to 30 times if they are caught post-release. So this can be used as an argument to push for internationalization compliance, because it means that you're fixing bugs early in a way, and you will be saving the company a lot of money. So there's a cost analysis there that can be applied based on this study by IBM and other companies.
Awesome. That is great information that I'm sure our audience will be able to use for their conversations. Patricia, any comments or thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. I know a couple of these studies. This is something maybe we can share with the audience. But yeah, definitely those are, I mean, they're very broad, if you want, because they belong to like large companies like IBM and some others. But definitely that could be used as a guide or as a first guideline on getting ideas or try to customize how you're going to get similar data for your particular company or the particular case that you may have. So Maria, thank you very much for this feedback.
Hi, Yuka.
Hello.
Hi, Yuka.
How are you? Thank you for this nice webinar. I know the time is very pressing, so I quickly share about the importance of internationalization at, let's say, startup. It's a little bit difficult definition, but startup means that, like you said, a small company trying to drive their operations so quickly and reach to the global audience. Is that right? And typically, it was my case too, the priority for this company is organized localization, meaning translation first, and take it to the repeated or managed level, the operation. Then engage the localization to agile continuous development, which is typically done in this type of operations. And then it comes internationalization, because localization is profit driver, but internationalization is cost reducer, as all of the audience and all of the participants in this webinar were sharing. So by doing internationalization, globalization is going to be full, and it will give the full power for the globalization. This is what I think. And it's always chicken and egg situation, because to show the result, we have to do something. But to show the result, to do it, we need the budget. But we really need to explain to the management and the developers why this is needed. And I think it's very important for startup to make an effort in internationalization. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Yuka. Thank you very much. I totally agree with you, and I agree. I think this is a great and very powerful way of concluding this webinar. I mean, if Maria, if I'm allowed to say just one last word.
Sure.
We need to start getting into a stage. We localization teams, we typically are an afterthought. We typically are kind of behind, not taking attention, but we need to start educating ourselves on how can we explain the requirements, how can we explain the return of investment, and let's stop off being shy or hiding and go there, talk to to the power taken person in the company, people in the company, sorry, and let's start to explain our story, and I'm sure they're gonna listen to us.
Absolutely, and I think we all see it as a no-brainer, right? So as you put it, Patricia, it's a little bit of kind of show me the money, and I think we could, well, more than write a book about measuring return on investment and kind of impact or cost of not doing internationalization properly. So, I think we should probably organize a separate webinar, a separate discussion on this topic alone. So we'll certainly look into that. We also very much look forward to continuing the conversation with all of you about internationalization or anything else related to it. You can reach out to either Patricia or myself or both of us via LinkedIn or Twitter or email or in person if you happen to be at Gala in Munich next week or at Lockworld in Portugal in early June, you know, we'll be more than happy to chat to you guys. And I guess just one final thank you to all of you for joining us today, for contributing to not only to the survey and to today's session, but to parts 1 and 2. It has been really fun kind of discussing this super interesting topic, and hopefully we have helped you get a little bit further along in terms of your thinking, your plans, and you know what you feel you can do in your own organization to drive internationalization forward. So thanks again to all of you, and thank you very, very much, Patricia, for another super fun session.
Thank you very much. Sorry about no videos, no funny videos this time, but you know, it's. I hope the message we've managed. I hope we have managed to put the messages through. And yeah, please feel free to reach us. We are really extremely interested in understanding the requirements, understanding the pain and the challenges other companies have, because you know we do have the same challenges. So it's great if we can share the experience. So we can educate everybody on that in the future.
Excellent. So now, Simon, we'll hand it over to you just to wrap up, or if there are any final questions, we can perhaps quickly cover them. And if not, we'll can close off.
No, all that's left to say is thank you very much indeed to Patricia, Paladini, Adell, and María Arriba again today for another in-depth webinar. There was an awful lot to get through there. Thank you so much indeed for going through that information. We hope you, the audience, have enjoyed it. If you didn't see part 1 and 2, just go to the vistatec.com website, click on the Knowledge Center. They're there, you can see them. And this episode, episode 3, will be available very, very shortly. Please stay tuned to all our social media for any further upcoming webinars, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much indeed for joining.